Welcome to Podcast This Escape, the podcast where we talk about the escape room that we escaped from in the previous episode of this podcast. Josh, we just escaped your toy, creepy horror room. It was wonderful, thank you.
Did we escape or did we massively screw up?
Both!
Yeah, a little bit of both, but y'all were amazing. Thanks so much for playing through it.
It was a pleasure to listen to. It was puzzles everywhere, which I am a huge fan of, and yeah, they were really impressive. I love doing them.
They were really nice. The puzzles came together really well. There were lots of different types. They were all like enjoyable to play with. And they also looked lovely. All your
oh yeah, well
attached
done.
Images, they all looked really lovely.
You
had a whole
put a buttload of work into this.
Thank you. I had a lot of fun making the images, honestly.
Do you have? Actually, I'll ask you first, Josh. Do you have a part of this room, like something that to you is like a standout thing that you're really proud of, or that you really enjoy people playing through? Do you have a favorite moment?
Yeah, so I think probably my favorite part of this room is the Mannequin Puzzle, where you have the blueprint, you have the control panel, and you use the family photo to kind of put it all together. It's maybe not necessarily the most challenging, but I kind of like those process puzzles where you need to figure out how the controls work, and then once you have all that information, you come up with a series of steps that arrives at the solution. And I also liked kind of the images, like the blueprint and the mannequins that are associated with it. I had fun making those. So probably altogether, that's my personal highlight.
I agree. All of that together was probably my big highlight, going from the start of just seeing the photo frame and the subtle mention of, oh, they're wearing bright colors, and going, okay, I'm going to pay attention to those colors. And then seeing that mannequin, which is just, the blueprint, which is just blue, green, red, and saying, I know that burgundy is kind of red. And then going, cool, we are piecing this together. I do not know what to do with these yet until we get creepy ass mannequin picture.
It worked out really well.
And then even then, just going, okay, let's mess around with these buttons, and then messing around in the way that feels like it should be right at first, just by actually taking the time to put them in the right positions, does not work because you run out of time for it. And then you realize, oh, oops, of course those buttons were a time-based thing or a number of moves-based thing. And then needing to sit down and take a moment away from it to plan out your steps. I agree. Altogether, it was a massive puzzle with heaps of pieces to it. It worked great. I had a wonderful time with that one.
It was a lot of fun. When you were designing the final part of that, right, where we've got only 5 moves and this many turns, and what was your process? Like, did you think, okay, let's say arbitrarily it's a 5-move puzzle, let me just work backwards 5 moves and then leave it? Like, was that something that took a while to develop? Did you have or did you have the mannequins and then figure out how many moves it took? What was the idea?
Yeah, so I think it was definitely a while back, but when I was coming up with this puzzle, I first kind of started with the idea that I wanted you to have to move mannequins on top of each other and rotate multiple at the same time, or else you would not have the amount of moves necessary to make it. That was the first restriction. And then I thought it would also be neat if you had to rotate a mannequin in a wrong direction, basically make it's in the right spot, but you have to make it incorrect in order to achieve that. And I don't think I had a specific number that I wanted, but I designed it so that really there was no other way around it. You had to do something like that. There is a slightly different solution that you actually can do. What you can do is you can rotate the and let me try to remember this exactly. You can rotate the father. I don't remember exactly, but there is one other approach to it, which is very, very similar. But there are only those 2 solutions, and no other way can you kind of finagle.
Yeah, I could imagine you could like flip the father wrong or back to correct, mix it with the mother, flip them both to wrong, and then flip them all back again.
That feels wild to be able to do in 5 moves, but yeah,
with the
if there's another way, there's another way.
Yeah.
Man, yeah, I thought that was great, and I did wonder if there were alternate solutions, but I just couldn't see any other way. Yeah, that was good fun. Now, we have talked before about like the length of this room and things, and we seemed like you had pared it down a little bit since some of the times that we'd spoken. What else was there that we didn't get from the original?
Right. So I've definitely done quite a few playtests of this room, and it did used to be a little bit longer in some parts. There were some extra puzzles, like certain books on the bookshelf that you had to piece together. There were changes to existing puzzles. Mostly what I kind of got rid of as I went through the different playtests was I noticed some puzzles that sounded pretty great in my head, and I thought they would be really nice and like not necessarily like frustrating or obtuse to solve. After several playtests of it, like continually not having the payoff, I just thought to myself, why is this even here? To make it longer? You know, the room's already long enough. So being a bit choosy with which ones I wanted to leave in.
Gotcha. Well, yeah, I thought that it felt pretty smooth. And as I was thinking about it and knowing that you had to pare things down, I was sort of thinking, are there any moments where it feels like something belonged here, or does it feel like this was something that could have been cut? But in the end, no, I thought everything felt like it made perfect sense as it was. So the decisions that you made, I think, were definitely the right ones. And hopefully whatever you have left over, you can use for another one in future.
Yeah, and I'm glad that it came across that way.
Did you, I know you mentioned that long puzzle also being one that you like. Did you have any moment though, like as a player, that made you feel, Danny, like, oh, I'm so cool, or this was a great moment?
I was the one who connected those colors.
Oh,
to
you
the
were
Vitruvo.
great at making those connections.
That made me pretty happy. What other ones were there? Let me just go through, remember them all. I was pretty happy at being able to cut out that lumberjack. That was nice.
Yes, yeah. Thinking of I think I just didn't have the right image in my head of that coaster, which is sometimes the issue with an audio room. That I was picturing it a way that I was like, well, that doesn't make sense, because I think I pictured it the whole circle being indented in as like negative space in which you would put a circular object.
Yeah,
and it was like labeled as a lumberjack goes here, and I was waiting for a lumberjack statue that would usually sit on the coaster that could also sit on the table.
Yeah,
I think when I set that up in my head,
mind.
I was past the point of being able to think about cutting it out. And
absolutely, the other highlight one, the chessboard rug puzzle, just the way that you had designed the answer to work for that one was very clever, so that we could see that numbers were a thing, but we could not in any way piece it together without the
I made sure to
information.
deliberately introduce a lot of other numbers that had nothing to do with the actual numbers you wanted to get.
And then breaking up the 50 into 3 separate bits was very smart. So we talked about this in a recent podcast, this Escape, when Danny was when we did the Safari Room, where Danny had designed this lock that you got clues gradually for a 4-digit code, but it was the final clue that sort of made you have to change previous clues.
Because it looked like it was going to be brute forceable.
Because, it looked very brute forceable, and the guests immediately were like, let's brute force it. Let's try and like solve it. And so it's a similar thing with this, where it's like you're setting it up that even if people saw all the relevant letters, they can't, until they get the puzzle, they can't be like, oh, here's how they're going to line up. Like, you
that
can't
55
guess.
part in the middle, the way that was split up.
It's a great way of making it so that you need the key.
Absolutely.
Because there's no way to guess that otherwise.
And certainly, I now realize, originally when we were looking at that as like a word search, we saw 2, 6, and 4. We did not see either the 1 or the 5.
No, we didn't see 1 or 5.
Come on.
I was explicitly looking for a 5 for a while, and I didn't see it.
Yeah, I was pretty amused when that happened, when you found almost, I guess, all the other numbers.
Yep, that was terrible.
But it works out really great. And I think it also works out that, to me, the 2 is the most obvious. It's the one that's written just as the number 2. Like, it's horizontal, TWO.
But TWO are funny enough letters that it could potentially just be a coincidence.
But it's also nice that the one that maybe makes you think about it is also one of the irrelevant ones.
Yeah.
Because it's not going to fall, you can't solve it from that point.
Absolutely.
And so I think that was really well done. It was a very fun puzzle. I didn't think about looking for a chessboard in the board games thing.
Oh, can I just say, your clues are outstanding. The exact level of cluing that you deliver is perfect, because it gave me that little bit of, oh, damn it, I'm an idiot push, but it didn't feel like you were spoiling it, because you just asked little questions and gave the smallest of nudges that were exactly what we needed. Like maybe something recent, or did you liken it to something? Did you comment on this thing looking like something?
That's always the best clues. Like, what did you say earlier?
Yeah, and that was exactly what you did. It was great.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much in this room, as y'all saw, so I felt it would be a little bit too much to, have you go through like literally every single object to find what you
It
needed
is
to do.
true. I don't know. I know the lighting is a bit funny. I don't know how you can see how many notes
Yeah,
I have.
I
So
can see.
I definitely got a little lost in them at some point. So
Right.
when we reached a point where I went, okay, I don't know what we need to solve this puzzle. Oh God, do I have to look back through everything to find it? I don't know if I can do that. Like when we thought about batteries and go, oh no, have we seen
what would
something
have
with
batteries in it?
batteries?
And then it was just
Good
nice. It was just
God.
the idea of batteries. Like
These things have been returned. They
theoretically,
would likely
the
have
batteries
batteries
go.
that
They
someone
go in
would have.
toys, in
Exactly.
toys that have been sold and returned. Okay, let's check that rather than them trying to remember some exact thing that we've seen that is battery operated, which was nice, right? It let us make that connection ourselves.
Something
really
about the chess puzzle that I also it made it a little bit difficult, but I had a lot of fun with it. Was I guess the moves, the fool's mate is I mean, it's the shortest checkmate possible, and I had fun actually making it a real move, not just random moves. And then, as you saw, the letters, the paths kind of overlap with each other. So whatever answer it was had to repeat like a letter in those specific orders. So that was definitely a lot of fun to put together for that.
Yeah. It was just well put together. It was very enjoyable. Each
There's
of these
actually,
steps.
3 puzzles in here separately that involve things overlapping in some way.
I suppose so.
How funny.
Yeah, the mannequins have to overlap the
Symbols on the
Symbols
7x7 grid. And then this as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's nice.
Clever.
I really enjoyed that. I liked the skin us all setup with the fight with the hands in the different places. Worked out really well.
Yeah, that was nice. It's always very elegant when you find things that work like that. Making letters out of things that shouldn't be letters.
And especially ones that they don't quite line up to how you would ever draw that letter, like the S's, and just that's not really what an S, how you'd ever draw an S, but it's enough that you're like, great, that's an S.
But it also
Noticing
means
the
that
K
once
works
you've
well.
drawn it, it looks creepy. So it's good
Yes,
atmosphere.
yeah, it makes you draw it like a bit of a creep.
Yeah.
Like you're some kind of Mike.
But yeah, putting those two together to make a K, I did love how that went as well.
Y'all
And then
got that really quickly, I have to say.
And I thought the thing that was nice about that as well is the K goes together going one after the other. You're like, oh, squeeze them up a bit and it becomes a K. And then the A, you have to go even further. And it's not a squeeze them up bit. It's like, no, they are together. They're in the same spot. And I liked that. It was like a...
Yeah, because the way we saw them in the notes for how to draw them, it was one on top of the other, literally.
And so that worked out really well. There were lots of fun little points. It felt at the first, like when it started, I felt a little bit like, oh, we have so many things to look at. We did. But I think they kind of worked together in quite a nice way. And generally, it felt like a lot of stuff that goes together was kind of close together, at least for the first few points. Like, the table relates to the degrees.
We felt like we
didn't have
could
to
get
see
a
the
decent
table.
amount out of the left-hand side of the room.
Exactly. It wasn't like you get the table and it's like, oh, learning, a path of learning. And then like 2 hours later, we find a book that says, I'm the path of learning. So instead we found a few things that were stuck together. And I liked that.
Yeah, and it was good because it wasn't like we could go between everything on the left-hand side and solve them all, but we could find pieces that went together
We
on
knew
that side
kind
of
of
the
what
room.
we wanted.
Yeah.
Like a lot of the time in this room, there was a feeling of like, oh, that's an input and we're looking for a solution, or oh, this is a solution that we don't know how to input. And so we kind of knew what we were looking for.
But
which is always a
this
good...
left-hand corner that we went to also gave us promise of things. It made us feel good. It gave us little bits and say, yes, you are getting there.
Yeah, it was nice progression. We've talked about this before, that like there's sort of like this kind of two things that feel good. And one is knowing from the start, like, oh, I'm keeping an eye out for this. If we ever see this, this is going to be good. And that's kind of like, oh, actually, it's the same thing, because it's either you're missing one part, and so you're looking at, you're waiting, and think, oh, this is it, finally. This is like a number that would go into that lock. Or it's like, you find a crowbar at the start and you go, I'm going to use this. I'm going to use this crowbar, and you're waiting. But it's the same feeling.
I'm
it's
glad
like you're
we got
waiting
so
for
much
one
use
more
out of
step.
that pocket knife, because that was a very specially mentioned pocket knife in that toolbox.
We used it for our cutting ourselves and cutting out the circle on the thing. Nice.
And then also skinning the dolls
And
as well.
oh no, don't remind us. I don't want to skin the dolls.
I did biology at university. I have skinned small furry things.
Yeah, but not people
I
dolls.
find it really, like, I don't want to say it's satisfying, but it's a really cool experience.
Was there much, I know we talked about things that you took out to shorten it down, but is there much, like, you've played this room quite a few times. You've run it for lots of people. Do you see much that's like different that
and
people do? Anything we did that people don't usually do, or stuff that's always the same? Like, how has it been running it for? Because we often just run for one group and move on with our lives. So, has it been odd? Like, what have you seen in the different people who've played through?
Yeah, so I have to say that kind of the first thing that I noticed that was very different about how y'all approached the room was you started off with the chest and then you moved, I guess, kind of a little bit clockwise for there, but it took you a very long time to get to the glass display case. So for a long time you knew, oh, we need occupations and they have to go with numbers, but you didn't find the dolls until almost looking through almost everything. Generally, I found people started at the top left corner and then went kind of clockwise from there, sort of just based on the order in which the descriptions came up.
That's fair.
Another thing that I was quite impressed by was for the mannequin puzzle and the control panels, I don't think there was a moment when you were trying to figure out how the control panels worked where you actually used the buttons to move or rotate more than one mannequin at the same time. Like that never happened, but you already just knew that they operated based on the columns, so you assumed that it would rotate or move multiple in the same column. And that was the correct line of thinking. But
that
everyone
is weird
else
that we
that I played
assume that.
with, everyone else that I
it's
played
weird.
with,
I think you can, because the idea is like, okay, you move one to the center, and then if you press the button in the center, the question is just like, well, what's going to move? Like, why would the mother move if you press right? How is it going to remember she was there? It's not going to. So
some people thought that the middle corresponded just to the mother mannequin.
Exactly. Like that was definitely
those people.
Sort of what was going on. That was going on in my head as well. But I think for me, it was as soon as we knew that 5 moves wasn't enough, it was, things have got to overlap.
Yes, I think that was it as well. It was like, we know that we know each individual move that needs to be made to get it to work. And we know that that is a minimum of 6 moves. And so there has to be a doubling up. There has to be a way to be more efficient with your movements. Otherwise, it can't be done. Yeah. So I think we were already like, yeah, this is going to be a thing. I guess
so. But you are right. It is funny that we didn't experiment to find that out. I didn't think of that.
For every other group, there was a move where they tried to press a button on a column that didn't have a mannequin in it. So a light would dim and then nothing would happen. And then that's when they would realize, it operates on the columns, not on the mannequins. But you never needed that.
Yeah, it was because we focused on rotating first, but if we had tried to move them first, we would have noticed.
Perhaps if we'd freed up a column.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just never would have thought that it operated per mannequin.
How interesting.
Yeah, there was lots of fun, and I felt quite good. I felt like in general, I felt that we worked well through this room. It being like, yeah, this is going to be this, or this is going to be this. Like at understanding what the kind of feeling. That's true.
I didn't feel stupid. I didn't feel stupid, which is good. Like, I didn't feel like I was smarter than the room, but the room also wasn't making fun of me.
Yeah, that was nice.
It's what you want. You want to come out of these feeling good.
I was sitting there thinking in my head, like, how am I going to get both of these windows up so I can click play on both of these audio files at the same time so that they overlap and make sure that it's lined up perfect. I'm glad there was I was like, yeah, of course there's a version that's already pre-overlapped.
I actually tried it, and it is technically doable, but it is quite hard. It is difficult for sure. So
good God.
Yeah.
It was great of you to notice, like, that's the same music. And then we could see that they were the same length, and it was like, and then it was immediately like, I know it's going to block out some, because it's just like a sense of tone, so we'll be able to get little bits.
It was very nicely done. Also putting 5 phone messages in there and having so much relevance out of each of them. Like, it's just little things that you got to pick up on them, but they weren't too long, so you had to really wait and sift through crap to get to the important part. But yeah, there was important stuff in all of this, and I loved it.
Yeah, I think one thing that I had in mind when kind of making those audio files was to have it serve 2 purposes. One is, yes, to be integrated into a puzzle, maybe not immediately, maybe later down the line, but also to sort of help world build a little bit, maybe show that Tim has people who say care about him, or, just he's a normal person who gets these same calls from colleges or universities asking for money, or etc.
100%.
Oh, yeah, and it worked really well. And I think that's always something that, like, from a design perspective, you need to be aware of, right? Like, things are not either story or puzzles, right? And I think this is a fairly, like, a common theme around escape rooms. Like, you can use story to deliver puzzle parts, and when you collect puzzle parts, you can use that to be part of a story, and the focusing on intermixing those well is, I think, what's the key to making a good narrative-based escape room. And people like, I know Manda Whitney loves to talk about, like, how narrative and puzzle mesh in escape rooms. She talks about it, and it's that same sort of feeling. It's like you can't go puzzle, puzzle, puzzle. Now it's time for some narrative. Now it's time for some puzzles again. Puzzle, puzzle, puzzle. Because then it's just you're telling a story and you're doing puzzles, but you're not telling a story with puzzles.
Yeah.
And I think a good escape room, and this is a good example of it, there's never a point where you're learning something that is explicitly either, like, completely puzzle or complete. I mean, there's some, right? Like, like, okay, cool, the chess puzzle is a great chess puzzle, and it doesn't hugely add to story, but, like, that should happen sometimes, because otherwise it might get a bit over. But like the general
and it's still
feeling,
thematic.
And it's still thematic, right? But then, like, the general feeling is like this move towards, like, when we learn something, it's like, that's really interesting, and also now we should go and put this code into a box. And I like that, and this room did really well.
Incidentally, speaking of the
those.
Nice mixing of just feeling and puzzle, was how the 7x7 grid ended up at a picture of an hourglass.
Oh, that was beautiful.
Not in any way something that from the story someone could just guess that it's going to end up looking like an hourglass.
But it's there to help people
as soon as you see it,
like,
it makes
us,
perfect sense.
Coming in with just like, yeah, it's going to be time. Time kills all. He mentioned time. Like, we were prepared, but if you're not prepared, seeing the hourglass in this lovely way, be like, oh, the hourglass, time, oh my gosh.
Actually, none of the other groups I played with got time before they saw that it was an hourglass.
Ah, how interesting.
So, as soon as y'all said time, I was like, wow, don't even need to know that it is an hourglass. But
I mean, we did just see the Batman last night, so I think we're riddles experts.
Yeah, we're just riddle crazy. Yeah, there was so many fun little things in this room. First time I'm in 2 pages of notes for a long time.
Oh, yeah?
I think I can start to just be like, a page of notes is an hour and 15 minutes of gameplay. So for your hour and 15-minute rooms, I fill out a page of notes, and for the hour and a half, the 2.5 hour rooms, I've got 2 whole pages.
Gotcha.
But no, there was lots of fun stuff. I liked the intro bit. I liked that it sort of ramped up into the room.
What excuses did other people give to Officer Jones?
Yeah.
A few of them said they were relatives of Tim. Some said they just happened to be in the area. Yours was definitely the most bold fib I've seen.
You gotta go hard.
Yeah, my first thought was, oh, my cat ran in there.
Oh, my cat.
Through one of the winch under the door.
What are you talking about, officer? There hasn't been a house here for 50 years. Are you all right? I think you need to get some sleep. The house burned down 100 years ago. On this very night. I'm a little sad I didn't see a ghost.
Yeah, unfortunately not. No ghost.
Not one of the dolls spoke in a creepy, high-pitched voice at us.
I mean, not from Josh's narration, but from mine. Yeah.
No, yeah, that is the thing that was in this room. Definitely not what I expected. That's messed up.
The multi-torso.
Yeah. Like, where did this?
Creature?
Yeah, why this idea? Where did the story of it come from?
Where did the story come from?
Yeah, what's wrong with you, Josh?
Yeah, some of my other playtesters asked me that. I personally really love the horror genre, and I also really like escape rooms. So I was, after listening to, say, the Red Hill Asylum room, I was like, oh, yes, this can definitely work well in this format. And I was just brainstorming sort of creepy things, I guess, and landed on what I have. No particular reason why I chose it. Maybe, I'm not sure if I remember, but maybe I was like looking at images and saw the Vitruvian Man. I was like, what if this was 6? And what if this was a family or something like that? And I don't know, building the narrative around it. Something else that I also kind of helped me when I was designing, say, like the narrative of the room is the what was mentioned kind of briefly at the beginning and end. There is this foundation or whatever that kind of works to secure these anomalous threats. So complete like disclosure, this is taking a lot of inspiration from I'm not sure if you've heard it before. It's called the SCP Universe.
Mm.
Essentially,
Oh,
what it
yeah,
is,
of
it's
course.
a sort of a collaborative community writing wiki where they have a lot of these strange, weird objects or entities. They can be pretty unique and fun, but some of them can be very scary. And there is a foundation and other organizations that seek to kind of contain these entities or materials. So that was kind of the inspiration that at least led to the narrative behind the room.
Nice.
I do like it's. I do like it's like no, I just came up with this horror thing. No, nothing weird. I just saw a picture of the Vitruvian Man. I thought, what if this was a family that was stitched together? Just jumped into my head. Years later,
think
I
that's
thought I could do an
great.
escape room.
That is absolutely how you just like horror. It can be based on like horrific plot lines and things happening, but so much of it is just, I feel, based on the tone of a single image. I feel like that is amazing for horror. So yeah, I think that's exactly the way you should come up with
Yeah,
it.
especially kind of short form horror. Like you want that feeling of like here's a thing that is creepy. And we can build around just the kind of the revelation of this thing.
Yeah, I'm not great with horror movies, but horror books, short stories, that sort of thing, that is absolutely something I get into.
And I like horror in a tabletop role-playing sense because it's like, here's a creepy thing that's happening. You know that you now need to do this thing. You have to tell me. You tell me what you're going to do. You have to tell me you're cutting your thumb. You have to tell me you're reaching into this, and you have to tell me you're taking the skin off this. Like, and you get you involved, and you start to feel a bit like you feel bad about it. You don't want to do it. You're like, I don't really want to skin this doll. I'm going to do it. And there's lots of ways that it's easier to manage. It's not as visceral because you're not, you don't have to. You're not seeing it. You don't have the soundtrack, but there is that added feeling of you have to be the one to commit and make that decision, and you have to say, I'm going to do this thing.
It's interesting. Like, the main time that I felt that was, as I think I made clear right at the end, we just didn't quite free this thing, but we have discovered this thing, and now you want to walk into a basement with nothing really in between us, and now us in a basement. Yeah, thanks. That's what I'm after.
Yeah.
But for me, and it sort of ties both of those things together, that being the active action of go and trap yourself in a basement. For me, horror is about the helplessness feeling, and it tied straight back into that, and that was exactly why I didn't want to take that active action, because we're moving ourselves straight into helplessness, because I'm very much in the do it way more than I should, where anytime I engage with one of these media, I go, what would I do in this situation? And most of the time, it kills me, because I know, yeah, there is nothing you can do. You just have to sit there and take it and hope that you die fast. And that's very upsetting.
Fair.
So yeah, that's what I get as the horror out of horror stuff.
The helplessness of horror.
Yeah, which we did pretty recently. Our first proper horror, I would say, real world escape room, not long ago. And that was absolutely one of the things that it did really well. If you remember one of the parts in it, they just got us, actually they did it a couple of times in there, doing almost menial tasks that just went on for a really long time, putting us in a situation where we couldn't move, we couldn't engage with the rest of the room, we just had to keep doing this stupid little task, knowing that something horrifying was coming for us. And it just, I feel like it really played into that feeling. Like, it was amazing how that happened.
Yeah, it was interesting. These long, drawn-out tasks that just build up that tension, because you don't know when it's going to end. You don't know when the thing's going to happen.
But we can't do anything about it.
You can't do anything else. It was interesting.
We couldn't even move from the spot that we were on. We had to be standing still.
That it was puzzle design built to try and add to the sense of horror.
Yeah.
It wasn't just that the puzzles could be in any other room. If those puzzles were in a non-horror room,
that
they would have been
ridiculous.
Bad puzzles. You know, this is a terrible puzzle. It's so boring. I'm doing the same thing. But in a horror room, it worked really well to make it tense and make it emotional. It's very interesting.
Yeah. It's really unique. Like, again, don't do well with horror fantastically. Like, there were some things in that room where I didn't want to be the person to do them because I didn't know what was coming. And it's an interesting sort of mix, like saying, I don't do horror movies. I absolutely do horror books. These rooms on our show, horror, totally fine with. I love it. And then real world escape rooms, always avoided them. And I'm still not sure where I sit,
Fair.
even after doing them.
Oh, well, yeah. This is. I mean, I really like.
Had a
this.
wonderful time.
Have you designed any other rooms, or are you thinking about trying to do another one?
So this is the first room that I designed, and from the way that it's set up, my goal of it was if I want to create another room that continues sort of in this universe, that would be possible, and then I could introduce, say, recurring characters. But I guess I haven't thought too much about it yet. I do plan to, but it's maybe a little bit far away.
That's
Well,
cool.
fair enough.
Whenever it happens, hit us up. We'd definitely love to play another
Yeah,
one.
it was a lot of fun.
Do you reckon we've covered everything?
I think we may have covered anything. Is there anything else from like the making of this, or anything else that's
Yeah,
an
anything that
interesting...
you wanted to get up that we haven't asked you?
Yeah.
Actually, when y'all were talking about, say, puzzle design to sort of induce horror, one thing that I'm not sure if it came across was as the room it was kind of a slow burn, I would say, in terms of the horror elements in this room. At first, it's kind of like a mystery. You're sneaking into somewhere
Sure.
and you learn the backstory and things get creepier and creepier. And I also tried to make it so that the theming of the puzzles also ramped up with the creepiness. Like initially, at least, it's, you're solving a chess puzzle, or, you get these little figurines and you place them into the spot. And then before you know it, you're arranging these mannequins, you're skinning dolls, etc.
No, I think it was good. I think the dolls are a great example of that. Like the first puzzle you do with a doll is
look at their
the
shoes.
But it's not even that. It's like the most wholesome thing of like, these dolls all have little jobs.
Yeah,
what
that's
job
true.
are you looking for? And then it's classic escape roomy, get a powder, put on their shoes, get numbers. It's all very chill. And you're right, by the end of it, it's now skin the dolls. Okay, now do surgery on the dolls. Now take the dolls apart. And it was like, take the pieces of these broken dolls and stick them into, like, it did work really well. Because I remember thinking that early on when we were like, partway through the first room, we hadn't turned the power on. And I was thinking, God, I think I was warned this was going to be like a horror room. It was going to get dark.
We were
but it's really
searching
not
for
that
where
dark.
was the horror going to come
Yeah,
in.
it's like, it's a pretty chill, like, it's not too bad. It's like, like,
and then we saw a maybe
thematically-
dead body through the window and go, okay, maybe.
yeah, it's a bit dark, and so
But
I think it did. I think you achieved that kind of ramp into horror quite well. That it did build up from that.
Yeah.
at a good pace as well.
I
It wasn't so sudden that at the end it was like, and suddenly there's bodies everywhere. Well, like it was a good kind of trepidation at the start that just got worse and worse. And
Incidentally, I think that we did that skin us all handprints puzzle in the best possible way because we went SICIN and then we paused and went, well, that's not a word. What do we? And then we put them together and went, oh no, that says skin.
Yes, yeah, it was a good.
I
good
think that's
version of
exactly
revelation.
where you want that realization to happen.
Because skin is the worst of those words. Us all. Oh, I wonder
Us
what we're going
is
to do.
not
That's
great.
fine. Us is not the best. Okay. Skin. Oh, I don't like this.
So yeah, that worked really nicely.
Yeah, a few playtesters had difficulty kind of combining the different kind of streaks together until they got to the A. Because I guess you could see it as an I and a C. It's not a real word, I guess, sicken. But when you get to the A, that's not even a letter. So then they
Forces
combine
you to
that and then they go back and realize it. But no, I think it is quite nice that you're able to get word by word, first skin, and then us, and then finally all.
Oh, wonderful. Well, I really loved it. That was a great room. It was fun to play with you, Danny. Thank you for bringing it on. It was great.
Yeah, I had so much fun. Thanks for playing.
It was, I really enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun.
Oh, it's great. And I love doing rooms like this that there is so much in here that I would never come up with. Like from everything from some of the puzzles to the theme itself. I don't know how long it would take me to come up with that as a theme. And so I love that.
Yeah, that's wonderful. All right, thank you. And thank you, everybody at home, for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. It was a very nice couple of episodes. If you want to help support the show, you can sign up to support us on Patreon. Anybody who signs up at any level has a chance to appear as an NPC in one of Danny's rooms. Hey, if your name was Creepy Mike, then you appeared in this one. There's also bonus episodes where we go through playtests and play 2-minute mysteries and do a whole bunch of other fun additional stuff. Not sure what we'll do for this one because obviously we don't have a playtest.
Ooh,
so
yeah.
maybe there'll be more Goosebumps or something. I don't know. We'll find out. You'll find out. It'll be released at the same time as this episode. There are badges as well for $10 donations and a whole bunch of other stuff. And it's the best way to help support the show, to support Escape This Podcast and Solve This Murder and all this other stuff. So, speaking of which, if you haven't been listening to Solve This Murder, go check out Solve This Murder. All right. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Thank you, Danny, and thank you, Josh.
Thank you so much for running this room for us.
Thank you for having me.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.